right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. Dr. Kimani Wamatangi, Kiambu Governor, is still here with us. Honorable Farah Malim, Dadaab Member of Parliament, is here with us as well. Senator Eddie Okech, Senator for Migori, is also here. And Nedama Olekina, Senator for Narok. Asante sana for making time. Now, let's talk about the biggest and the most pressing issues for Kenyans, which is the cost of living, coupled with the worst drought in 40 years. The government says the Galana Kulalu is the project that will bear a lot of fruit by giving food to the community, but it has been sabotaged in one way or another. They are going to kickstart it. CS Treasury, Njuguna Ndungu, says we should brace for tough times ahead. But Governor Kimani, before I get into that, you've been running into headwinds in Kiambu with your MCAs. They say that you refused to give them bursaries and you refused to delink your foundation from the affairs of the county.
All right. Thank you, Trevor. I think those are, let me just describe them shortly as teething problems within a new county government. I mean, that is the new administration within the county, because there has to be a lot of understanding, I believe. For example, let me give an example. In my county assembly, we have about 86 members, 26 nominated, 60 elected. Out of those 60 elected, not all the 26 are new nominated. Out of the 60 elected, you have only about 10% who have come back. So the rest are all new. So getting to first understand how most of these legislative things get work, sometimes due to misinformation, sometimes due to a few in political interest, you find that there's bound to be that kind of thing. But once things are put in proper context, then you find that that kind of thing dies off. For example, like that accusation that I refused to give bursary. A governor cannot fail to give bursary because bursary is prescribed in law. And besides that, even the county government itself has a law passed by the same county assembly in as far as how much is the bursary fund supposed to dispense to the members of the public, and the methodology. Who is supposed to play what role? How do you get the person who plays that role, lawfully? So that, the main thing about bursary is that it has to be dispensed of completely without favorism. If I just give a very quick example, Trevor. See, for example, in Kiambu, the last county government had allocated about 100 million Kenyan shillings for bursary. If you look at, we're trying to do just an average of the demand. If you just give only 3,500 to the people who want that bursary, in our 60 ward, you'd only be able to give 400 people. The demand per ward is in excess of 2,000 people in every ward. Actually, some even 3,000. So you find that it's such a small amount. Hence, you expect that there's going to be a lot of competition around it. So some of those things are things that I took time to explain to our members of county assembly. And I believe now there's appreciation that we need to follow the law, that we need to comply, and we need to dispense of bursary, ensuring that only the deserving people would get it, using a completely transparent and public-owned process. That's the whole issue. Of course, when that kind of thing arises, there are a lot of other political players from the sidelines who push and throw spanners around. But the thing is that, Trevor, what I would want to focus on is, because I've had the good luck and the blessing to have served as a leader for the 10 years I've been elected as senator. I use that experience most of the time to sober up things and ensure that we keep focused on what the goal is. The goal is just this very short 5 years to ensure that we've moved the county from where it has been for all those 10 years, very behind, to a better position by ensuring that we keep the focus to and on the job. Okay. So that's why you find most of the time I'm not either quick to run to media, wherever, and say things, because if we do all the things that were done in the past to fund disagreement and the public and look like there's a battle and war, then we will not serve our people. So I just want to be very brief on it and say there is really not much to it. It was just a misunderstanding of how the law is applied, and that have made very clear. And I intend to use that experience from the Senate to ensure that then will become a lawful and obedient county to how things are supposed to be done.
So you've explained this to your MCAs?
Yes, we did. We had a very good meeting after that, and we discussed, and they appreciate, and we are basically on the same line now and trajectory and way of doing things. And I believe that moving forward, all these lessons are going to be learned continuously, and until then we have a good momentum to build the county.
Okay. Ledama, how can you help governors from this, what would you call it, the MCAs having some powers over them in one way or another? Because we also saw Meru happening the other day. Even in Kiambu, they had threatened to take action against the governor, Wamatangi.
Trevor, you had asked, earlier on you had asked a very pertinent issue to do with the issue of the drought. And if you allow me,
we're coming to that.
We're coming to that.
Right after
so, okay, so I'll try and answer your question directly. And I think it is imperative that we legislators remain as legislators. MCAs are legislators. Governors are people who execute the will of the legislators on behalf of the people. The moment we start demanding things as MCAs or as legislators is the moment we start having problems with the executive. If you look at what has happened in Parliament on the issue of CDF, you know, in fact, in most cases, the president is held at ransom because he's told, unless you give us CDF, we will not pass your budget. It is now going down to the MCS. Unless you give us War Development Fund, unless you give us bursaries, unless you give us all these shenanigans, we will impeach you. I think for us in the Senate, it now behooves us to be able to come up with a law on procedures of impeachment of a governor. I feel sorry for the governors.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes you cannot be able to do anything because the MCAs are in your case. But the problem goes down to the wananchi. If wananchi, when you are electing a leader has come and told you, I'll put a road here, I will build a hospital here, I will give all your children bursaries. When that person is in office, you expect that person to deliver on his promises. But we all know that the most productive way is during the budget-making process. Like during the budget-making process, when the governor submits his budget estimates and say, this is what I'd like to do for this county, we need to start changing from there. And I hope that Governor Wamatangi will begin by moving away from this line item budget to a program-based budget, looking at the CADP, and then demystifying it further to an annual development plan. And he says, I have 84 members of County Assembly. On those 84 members of the County Assembly, I don't know how many wards you have. If it is 60 wards. So every MCA must come up with their priorities for their ward and say, Governor, before I can pass this budget, these are the priorities that we want for my ward. We don't have this road. Now, this road, is this road under the county government or is this road under the national government? If it is under the national government, then the county governor must now engage the members of parliament and say, go to the national government, discuss on how this road can be built. The moment you do that, then the governor would be able to assist that MCA deliver on the promises that that MCA made towards the people. Whenever a matter is brought to the Senate, it is important for people to know that we in the Senate do not impeach governors. Governors are impeached by the county assemblies. The county assemblies must follow the law. We know we have the County Governments Act. We know it has got certain problems. We know we have also standing orders that limits the duration of time of investigation. And we know that the Senate becomes a quasi-judicial process. You know, we are more like a political process in terms of, impeaching a governor. So it also depends on what the executive wants. If the executive wants and the majority you know, part of the House has been told this is a way to do it, sometimes it can lead to a very effective governor being impeached. So the only way, in a nutshell, the only way to stop these fights between the MCAs and the governors is, one, the governor must be honest to the MCAs and say, gentlemen and ladies, we need to work together for the betterment of our county. You bring in what you want for your ward. You bring in what you want for your ward. Let's put it together in a 5-year plan. And then in this year, let's do A, B, C, D. Are we agreed? Yes. Number 2, legislators, stay in your line. We write the laws. We make the laws. Okay? We do not implement. The moment we want to start implementing the laws, the moment we start having problems with those people who are supposed to be able to implement. Okay. So those are the only 2 ways that we can stop having problems. Right. Well, legislators with the president and also MCS with the governors.
All right. Let's start a different conversation now, and it's about this state of the economy and the cost of living. And you were talking about...
Yes. Can I continue?
Farah wants to...
I'm actually very, very happy that I'm hearing this from a senator.
Yeah.
Because the problem started in the Senate, in the very first Senate.
Okay.
Because the senators realized that they had very little role in other areas. This house, instead of being the real upper house, was essentially relegated to just a house of union. Then they decided to become relevant by trying to scrutinize the governors. You know what I mean? Pushing the governors and saying that we have to investigate you. And in the process, there was a conflict between the governors and the Senate.
You have to disagree. I have to disagree.
Okay, let him
that is what the way the problem is. No, you're still in school that time. I'm talking about the time.
I'm a good student. Good observant.
Yeah.
So that is where the problem is. Now Matang is here.
Yeah.
And actually, I remember that I contested for the Speaker of the Senate. And among the things I told them is, I lost just with 1 vote because I missed 5 votes from ODM. I mean, these are the very strange things about ODM, where they eat their own sometimes.
No. But I supported
just a moment. No, you're talking about the one of 2017.
Yeah, but on the second one, we all supported.
Oh, yes, I'm talking about the one of 2013.
Okay.
2013. You know that the one of 2013, we lost because of that. Now, I told them that time, there has to be a synergy between the Senate and the county governments. You are in a team. You work as a team. And the idea was that not only were we going to use that opportunity to bring the closeness and even enhance the percentage that was going to be devolved. But then the push and pull, and I think it was at that time, the push and pull between the Senate and the governors became very evident and very pronounced. And that is where it was lost out. Okay. Now, I'm happy that Ladama, when Ladama and others came in, they started doing it differently. I remember going on the show on a number of occasions and telling people like Sang, who was a senator at that time and later became a governor. And he agreed with me and he said, you were right, I wish we went on that foot the first time. Okay. Now, if the 2 houses are going to work together, the House and the government, we'll go far. Okay. Because then, one of the things that the Senate was supposed to do was to go to the county governments and enhance their capacity. No, county assemblies.
Yeah, that's good.
And
even the county government.
And enhance their capacity. Enhance their capacity. I gave a lot of consultants. I remember 1 or 2 counties those days, a couple of them because I didn't have time for many. And they did very well. The synergy between those, the executive and the county assembly was fantastic. And that's the way it was. Now, to give this programmed long-term development and medium-term development by the county governments themselves, for the county governor to say, look, this year we can afford to put in terms of development budget so much. What are the most urgent priorities that we can put in and in which wards? And then the next year, where do you go? And then the next day, where do you go? Then you cannot, because you cannot, instead of saying, we're going to give you 5 million shillings for this ward this year, 10 million, that is a paltry peanut sum that doesn't take anybody anywhere. So that programmed medium-term and long-term plan has got to be done, strategic plan, strategic development plan by the governor and in consultation also with the county assembly, just to put them on the loop, and then create that what you call timetable for implementation of serious developments in every ward.
All right.
Otherwise, if they want to get everything and they don't get it, for sure they begin looking for some excuses and they do what.
Eddie, very briefly.
I really think that this is something that I must chime in, Trevor. First of all, I do respect the perspective that has been put here by my colleagues here. But I think that there are some fundamental pieces that we are missing. And that's why I was very keen on what Senator Ledama was talking about. First of all, I've had a chance, Trevor, to interrogate a number of CIDPs of the counties, and even more importantly, physical priorities of different counties, including Kiambu. And they are very solid, Trevor. If you look at them, they are really, really good. Also, in this past month, I had a chance to actually participate in the committee, select committee, the special committee that was dealing with the issue of impeachment in Meru, and therefore was able to interrogate some of the issues that were raised by the MCAs against Governor Kawira of Meru. And my sense that I get that I wanted to emphasize on, and we are all politicians. One of the things that we are facing as politicians is that our population have got some unrealistic expectations on us, which includes things like personal needs for school fees, dealing with the matters of basic needs like food, dealing with issues of funerals, dealing with all these issues. At our levels, and sometimes the levels of MPs and even the levels of senators, we sometimes are shielded from the realities of how these pressures exhibit to MCAs on the ground. So to the extent that MCAs are with the people on a day-to-day basis, there are two things that have come out. One is that pressure from the people. But also number two is the bad habit that was created by the preceding governments, whereby governors had actually used MCAs to be able to protect them in some shoddy deals, where the previous governors empowered some set of MCAs through corrupt deals and shielded them against this idea of oversight in the counties. What did this problem bring to our country? It made sure that people who were vying for MCAs vied with their own personal expectations of enriching themselves. Some of the MCAs that came in the first government and the second county government, are some of the richest people you can find in their local communities, demonstrated by the kind of houses that they've built, the lifestyle that they live, so that when these MCAs come to these kind of conversations, they come with the expectations that there is money in government to do business and to enrich themselves, and more importantly, to deal with the individual pressures of their local communities.
All right.
This is the biggest problem where now we find that if you cannot meet the personal expectations of MCAs, then they start having problems with that particular governor.
Okay.
And I think this is something that we need to sit down and address. But just to finish, Trevor.
Yeah, briefly.
I think it is also very important that as we look at the hills that some governors have put in place as a bad habit, it's also very important that we start looking at the threshold for impeachment. Okay. Impeachment in itself, to check on an executive under Article 179 of the Constitution and under the County Governments Act, Section 30, is extremely important so that governors can be able to serve people.
Okay.
But the threshold that we have under the County Governments Act, Section 33, is a very low threshold. That I think that I am personally very interested, and I know my colleague here, who is my senior, is also very interested on us coming up with a bill that can be able to very well articulate what an impeachment threshold should look like in the county to deter this back and forth, so that we remain with impeachment, not as a tool of politicking to get what the MCAs want when they want it, but as a tool of oversight of governance.
All right, Wamatangi, very briefly before you talk about now.
Well, Trevor, I just wanted to put in my voice. Number one, in the first, where I start with Senator Ledama Olekina. And by the way, Senator Ledama, I didn't congratulate you for winning a second term.
Thank you very much.
When we start together, we had a very pragmatic senator called Senator Engineer Karwe of Nyandarua. And this is the gentleman who came up with the CDF law those days. And he came up with a very good bill, the impeachment bill. We debated it around the Senate. It found its way to the National Assembly, but by the time the House was adjourned, sine die, then that bill had not seen the light of day. I think it is very important that the current members who are there sort this issue out, because I believe the only pending gap is ensuring that we have that, what you described, Senator, to ensure that there is a proper procedure and a threshold that allows that, yes, impeachment is a proper and useful tool in ensuring political responsibility is adhered to by governors and presidents. That's the executive. But it has to have a clear threshold for exactly the same reasons that you've said. And I think when you go back to the House, look at that law. It was a good law. Yes. And enrich it with the current circumstances. And finally, we would have, I believe it must still be in the archives of Parliament, such that then we have a proper, well-refined procedure with a good threshold that will allow things to happen and work to get to be done without all these, the political machinations and even so many people hanging around by the sidelines, including other interested parties, who want to go to MCs and tell them, we'll give you this, we'll do this so that you can go and kill that guy, remove him, this kind of thing. And then you have a neat process. At the end of the day, we want a lawful community, a lawful way to leadership. But then lastly, I also agree entirely. I wanted to emphasize that with your thoughts, that development must be based on a good program, not on handouts, and not on those small incentives that you incentivize that one so that he can be your loudmouth. Have it in print and paper, and that's what we are doing now in Kiambu. I've encouraged my members of County Assembly, and I believe they are starting to appreciate it. That let us document, this is the project we want in this ward, and that, and that, and that. Let's put them here. Then our development is guided by that, and we base it on what we have in our current CIDP, which we are developing. And that way, people will start to see things are happening. We are doing quite a few things now in Kiambu, and I'm sure within the next 3 months, people will see that we are transforming the county.
All right. Ledama, now let's talk about the cost of living and the tough times ahead. Worst drought in 40 years has hit Kenyans hard. The government, through the president, said that the Galana Kulalu is the solution. In fact, in February, they're starting with 10,000 acres. In the next 2 to 3 months, they're going to 300,000 to give more yield of food. Professor Njuguna Ndungu, the CS for Treasury, says this is going to be a tough year. Where does this leave Kenya, and what is the lasting solution? The Deputy President himself said that ever since he took office, he's become a beggar, asking for food for his people.
Well, let me put it this way. I want to be a little bit optimistic, and I know the challenges that we're facing as a country, but we are a resilient economy. We are an industrious economy, which, if you look at the last 8 years, Kenya has surpassed all its neighbors in terms of its economic growth. We have a GDP of about $110 billion. If you look at the biggest problem that we have is our debt. Because if you look at the debt ratio, the GDP is 69.1%. So that is what we need to do. That is what we need to now ask ourselves, what can we do? And I think it becomes defeating when the executive talks about becoming a beggar, or actually talks about a rough year ahead, when everything we are doing, even in Parliament, is to try to make it very difficult for anyone to try and invest in this country. What am I saying? If you look at the biggest problem we have right now, if you look at the Finance Act of 2022, it has increased the... Okay,
right.
Gentlemen, can I concentrate in my thoughts, because it becomes a bit difficult. Right. If you look at the taxes that you pay in terms of when you sell a property, what do you call it? It's
it's called
the capital gain tax. We in Parliament increased it from 5% to 15%. So we have not thought about of the unintended consequences. And what are the unintended consequences? One, no one would want to sell their property You know, people will want to retain their properties and say, I'm not selling my property because the moment I sell my property, I have to pay 15% tax as capital gains. If I have shares in the Nairobi Stock Exchange, I cannot be able to sell those shares because I'll have to give the government 15% in terms of taxes. So I think sometimes we try to talk about growing the economy, but we are destroying it with our own actions. You know, I think members of parliament have got to pay a keen attention to the budget-making process this time around. Before we pass a finance bill, let us look at what has been affecting the growth of this economy. There's no way you're going to make it possible or attractive for anyone to want to come and invest in this economy when you're increasing the taxes. We know we have the issue of the debt. If you look at the proposed budget by the current administration, it's about 3.6 trillion Kenya shillings. The last administration had a 3.3 trillion Kenya shillings budget. So we've gone up with how much we want to spend. So how are we going to spend that? We are talking about the challenges. I had my friend, the CS for Treasury, giving reasons why the economy is going to be really, really tough. And he talked about the Russian-Ukraine war, which is affecting our growth. He also looked at the issues of COVID, which is continuing affecting, because very soon, maybe we might actually be asked to continue to start wearing masks. So if we know these challenges, then why are we increasing our spending? You know, we have a big problem with the irrigation scheme that the president is talking about being the biggest, what he wants to use to be able to feed the nation.
Yeah.
I think we must now begin to realign our existing resources. We must ask ourselves, in our own counties, you know, what are the challenges that we have? How can we realign those existing resources? Stop this dependency on the West, stop this dependency on borrowing, and see what we need to do. And to be practical, let's go to a county like Samburu as an example. Samburu, if you dig 20 meters, 30 meters, you find water. Why not invest in getting water so that we can be able to do irrigation projects that are local, instead of saying we want to invest in a huge project in Tana River, which you know the bourgeoisies and all those big boys are the ones who are going to benefit in that.
Okay.
Number two, right now we are having a big crisis in Northeastern, you know, and I can tell you the April rains will fail. Because we've got two winds. We've got the northern, I think there's the northern and the southern winds, the monsoon winds. In Northeastern, they depend on the northern winds. You know, this year, Somali will have a huge drought. Northeastern will have a huge drought. You know, the April rains will fail. So what can we do now to be able to prepare our people? There are few things that we can do. There's absolutely no reason as to why our pastoralist cows should be dying. You know, we had KMC. If we cannot be able to sell the meat because the meat is, the cows are skinny, why not move into biltong? Why not, in Masai, we have something called seregan, which is the beef jerky. I lived in America for over 20 years. And when you live in America, when you go to any gas station, you'll find the lean meat is sold there, and you just use old tradition and you make the beef jerky, and you're able to sell your cows and they don't end up dying. So I think what we need to do is, number one, the governors must now petition Senate.
Okay.
Actually, to even come back from recess, let's discuss this issue of the drought. Let us also discuss the issue of the economy. Let's see what we do not need.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, we do not need to raise the capital gain tax to 15%. You know, we do not need to do that, because what we will do is that we will deter any prospective investors from coming into this country.
Okay.
We have maintained a positive economic growth for over 5% across the last 8 years. We've been in a positive trajectory. So if we are spending more, and it will lead to borrowing more, it will lead to more taxation, why don't we live within our means?
Okay. Honorable Malim, you've watched this over time. Have we simply been living beyond our means? And the CS for Treasury, Njuguna Ndungu, says now they need to get into an aggressive revenue collection and lower expenditure so that we somehow live within our means. Is that a solution to the current rising cost?
Well, I agree with him to the extent of the lowering of the expenditure, because when you want to spend what you don't have, then you have to borrow. And when you borrow, they do not borrow from the traditional multilateral and bilateral donor institutions. They don't go to World Bank and IMF and the rest of it. They go to commercial banks or they go to China. The reason is because those are very amenable. You can have your 10% margins put aside for you, whatever percent. This country has depended on the poor people for the longest.
Yes.
They are the ones who are bearing the brunt of the load. Now, you will make it difficult for them to farm because fuel has risen from what was like 60-something shillings per litre now to 200 shillings.
To almost 200.
And then you are taxing everything, including the essential commodities that they were having, and you're removing the subsidies. And you're not creating any bigger, what do you call, economy for them. The cake is not bigger. This country gained in the early days because of the emphasis of what was called the smallholder. The smallholder.
Yeah.
When we split up those big farms and put them in 5 acres, 3 acres of tea farms, coffee farms, and the rest of it, there was a big outcry that once we get rid of those big landowners who are mostly whites, and then later on, of course, the African class of bourgeoisies who were in the system, who took over those things using the money that was supposed to help the ordinary people. The money that was the 20 million pounds that the UK put in as a grant to purchase the land back from those settlers and subdivide it and then they took it themselves in the big chunks. And I'm talking about the leadership of the government those days. Those smallholders did a fantastic thing. That's why Kenya Tea Development Authority was so well endowed and so powerful and so successful in the early days. Until everybody, when there was the way there's money, then the government again, people, you know, the deep state and then goes to raid it again. Now, what needs to be done right now, as Ledama puts it, see how you can help the ordinary people. Additional boreholes, fertilizer, free fertilizer, technical, what they call services, agricultural extension workers who are out there to advise the ordinary people out there.
Yeah.
And I mean this, and seeds, the top seeds, to be given government to put in money into those top seeds and give it to those smallholders. That is, I think, the way we can grow our economy. At least we can have a certain element of food security. I'm not quite sure whether our economy is doing as well as Ledama wants to say we're doing. We're not doing well at all. Tanzania has caught up with us for information. And I don't believe those numbers that come out of the Treasury. And I'll tell you the reason why. We were 70%, 80% trade imbalance or deficit with Tanzania before. They had deficit, we had what do you call an over. The imbalance was also in favor of us. Today it's the reverse. 70% Tanzanians export to our country, and we give less than 20, 30% ourselves to Tanzania. And that is becoming the in thing in a number of places. In Uganda, before Ugandans used to come and buy goods that are imported from outside because you cannot have a double taxation. The customs union is such that if you tax it in Kenya, that's it. You can take it to Tanzania without taxation. If you tax in Tanzania or Uganda, then you can bring it here. People used to come from Uganda and Tanzania to come and buy from Garissa Lodge and take it to those countries. Now it's the reverse. Kenyans are going down now to Uganda to go and buy and then bring it here because it's much easier for them. So we have had a problem. We have had a selfish government that preyed on its own people. Whether it's the capital gains tax, whether it is the customs and excise taxes that they were doing at the Mombasa port, all those things. We have lost business in Mombasa port. Business has shifted to Dar es Salaam and Tanga now. Business has shifted to Dar es Salaam and Tanga, and progressively that's where it's going.
Yeah.
Now we have Lamu, which was supposed to be the lapsed thing. I don't know where we're going to go with the lapsed because Ugandans are no longer with us. The oil from Uganda is going through the other side. These are the things we should have aggressively. If you look back, 4 years back, 5 years back, and you look at that debate in Twitter and on televisions and the rest of it, I was telling our Kenyan folks, we're making a mistake. business will shift. And when business shifts, we are a country that has marveled itself on, we don't have natural resources so much to, we were a service country. People imported their things through us. And then we gave it to Ugandans, we gave it to Rwandans, we gave it to the Burundians, Eastern Congo, to South Sudan. How much of that business is still with us today coming through Mombasa? Very little. The bulk of it is gone to Tanzania for information. So we need to get this, we still hold up. And the only thing we're doing, which is giving us a bit of a comfort, is we're taxing our ordinary man more and more and more and more. Literally walking into the pockets, the man who's earning 200, 300 shillings a day, and telling him this additional, taxes on food and everything and consumables and the rest of it. And life is becoming much more difficult. Yeah. More and more difficult. If you could take care of your family with 400 shillings and a laborer somewhere 5 years back, today you can't take care of that same family with the 400 shillings. You need at least another 200, 300 shillings. Okay. So the problem is with the manner in which, and by the way, for your information, I was thinking that this government was going to come up with some kind of a revolutionary, the hustler, the bottom up, all that kind of stuff. We were under the impression that they were going to come up with earth-moving revolutionary ideas that were essentially going to properly and genuinely begin addressing the plight of the very common people out there. It's not the case, my friend. It's business. You see, the more you think things have changed, the more they remain the same. If not worse. Not worse, by the way. So we have an issue. We have an issue in this country, and we're just sitting on a time bomb. And it's just a matter of time when those millions of Kenyans out there unable to have a 3 square meal in a day will come out into the streets, and we'll have a problem.
All right. Well, Matangi, how do we get out of this hole?
Two things, Trevor, I would want to say. Number one, I think on the issue of drought, we have a good opportunity. It's only that we've not exploited that opportunity. I've said it before. If you look at, ask yourself, how do we, when it's high season time, when it's raining, when we have water available, floods, what do we do? You have like Kenya says, you have floods in Budalangi, and what happens is people run away, and we all stand and watch, and the water flows to the Lake Victoria and to the Nile and back to the ocean. What happens even in northeastern and the other places like where Honorable Farah comes from? You have floods all over, and
all the way to Indian Ocean.
Water is in the Indian Ocean.
Or Tana River.
What have we done, or are we doing seriously to ensure that we have water conservation all along when water is available? And that you will mitigate a season like now. What we ought to do, and I believe we shall do it, within this regime, is to intensify, invest in a focused way in ensuring that when this rain falls, before it falls, and I'm sure you heard the president speaking about it the other day, that we are even going to change the model of how we are doing our dams. We are not going to be relying anymore that we are going to go and borrow funds. We will look at how internally ourselves will use our own investors through PPPs, through ensuring that when we even give water, that water pays back itself once we've dispensed it, so that we can focus on investing in water conservation. And once we've done that, then you find that these things about drought will be a thing of the past. How do countries that are in the desert, literally, why don't you ever go to Dubai or to Saudi Arabia or to Israel, and you hear people speaking about the effects of drought? And those guys are perennially, that is their all-out season. It is their ever season without, without rainfall. It only comes once in a while. But they have known and intentionally invested in conservation. Number two is on then the after effect of drought is famine, is the situation that we have now, that we have to go and start giving food rations. But when it is bumper harvest time, again, what do we do? Number one, if you look at our methodology, is when we have bumper harvests, that everybody is taking food out of this country. People are out there selling Tanzania. People are out there exporting without first asking ourselves, even as government, and I also believe that we are going to do it, how are we ensuring that in our strategic food reserves, we have invested to make sure that even if there was drought that was going to last a whole year, that we have food conserved for our population. And I believe that is the other area of focus that we'll be looking at. And then lastly, I think and I agree, and I would want to support His Excellency the President, that it would be a mistake that we made such an insightful idea and thought work in the first place, but eventually it went down. In, for example, like a project like Galana Kulalu, if proper thought, investment, and responsibility of application of funds was employed to ensure that a project like Galana Kulalu has succeeded, then we would start to show the rest of the country that what happens in other regions where you don't expect any food to grow, but it grows and those people are food secure, that we can do it ourselves. But if you have all the swaths of land in the whole of this country, and if you look at the percentage of arable land in Kenya, you find that the imbalance is imbalance we cannot speak about. So if we are telling that 3/4 of the country should only wait for when there's rainfall, for then the quarter of the country to feed the rest, then we have our game wrong. Let me finish by saying this, Trevor, that on that major subject of then how do we ensure that our economy is vibrant and that the power to purchase and put food on the table is in everybody's hands. We have our model very wrong. We have had it wrong all the time. But I believe with our new concept of bottom-up, it's going to work. Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Look at, you just don't even need to go to detailed statistics. Look at just how do models in working, successful corporations or companies work. Ask yourself, even from here in Kenya, which is the most profitable company now? It's Safaricom. What is Safaricom's model? Safaricom's model, even if it's not, it's one of the highest. What is their model? And you can even mention any other. The model is spread amongst the maximum number of people for as little as you can. And that's why you have Coca-Cola as one of the biggest success stories. What do? They manufacture a soda that you sell at only 20 bob. But even globally, the most successful companies are not the Boeings of this world who manufacture one item that they sell at hundreds of millions. The model that works is when you have spread that power amongst people. That is why you find that the biggest and most profitable company is Amazon. And what do? They sell little by little as small profits to everyone. So in our model, once we have succeeded, and that is why we are in ensuring that people are all empowered wherever you are, that you can be able to make your own case, purchase, and put food on your own table, self-reliantly, then we'll get it right.
All right. Eddie?
Trevor, you know, when it comes to issues of economy, I get a little bit jittery. Because as a young person who is trying to survive in this economy, and also as a young person who interacts with other young people across the country, and see how it's just difficult to even plan for your future, it becomes difficult. If we want to look at how our economy is performing, the first thing that we must look at, and we must never lose sight on, is the cost of energy. And the cost of energy in this country drives literally everywhere. Of course, the government chose to remove subsidies on energy, thinking that maybe agriculture is the place to perhaps put some subsidies in terms of subsidizing fertilizer, and forgetting that people like the border industry, which is a service economy and therefore production economy active in our economy of over 1.5 million people, use energy. But now you ask the question, where is our problem? You know, given what the Minister for Finance talked about. I think that our problem is simply in the mismanagement of our economy with regards to corruption. Because if the issue of energy, for instance, that I'm talking about, today, if you want to assess how your economy is doing, you must go to the fuel levies charge that is charging our economy, and you must also go to the forex charge. The fuel levies usually in the economy, and my brothers here will agree, that the fuel levies that we are charged, that form the basis of taxation, should ordinarily be something that is based on fluctuations that are on the global prices for fuel, or if it's directly a cost that has gone to local production of electricity. Today, if you look at a normal Kenyan who buys electricity at a cost of 2,000 shillings, what happens with this person is that they end up getting units equivalent to about 958, which basically means that a Kenyan paying for electricity today is charged almost 27% more on fuel charge. And that fuel charge, it is hydropower that's produced locally, meaning that it's not responding to global prices. Number two, when you look at something like forex charge on that same consumption, it is almost over 10% in Kenya today. Now, what is the problem there? The problem is the government is taxing people to manage its own problems that are corruption-based. Today, Trevor, is over 100 days since President Ruto took over power. We can actually draw comparisons that when we finished our elections last year, government of Kenya has not had the disturbance that we have had in other elections. This can be akin to what Kibaki did when he was transitioning to power. Within 3 months, because he didn't have disturbances, the first thing he did was to arrest runaway corruption that makes government very expensive. And in our country today, Trevor, I can tell you without a doubt that the problem that we are having, number one, is the leakages that government has in its taxes. Because you can collect all these taxes, but if they don't get to the pot of government, then it's a problem. KRA officials that are raising so much money by making people either evade tax or basically just have a loophole that you get that people are just taking money out of government, makes it difficult for this government to be stable. And then when you look at now the expense side, which the governor says that you must manage, you cannot manage an expense when on that other end, you also have got wastage in public resources. Okay. How is wastage happening in our country today? The wastage is happening by procurement processes that are completely inflated. That inflation is what responds to the inflation that we're seeing in fuel and these other places. Because our government today, if you check, and I've had the benefit of being in the committee, in the Budget and Finance Committee in Senate, and therefore when we were going through looking at things like equalization fund and additional county revenue funds, we had a chance to sit with the CRA. And you can see how our government is spending. Of all the monies that we raise, almost up to 70% goes on government wage bill and issues to manage government.
So it's recurrent
expenditure that don't go to development. And if those recurrent expenditures, if you interrogate them, the expenses, Governor, that we have in this country are crazy. Why? Because procurement officers are making it possible for government to have those leakages. Okay. Why is it becoming an endemic problem? It becomes an endemic problem because these illicit financial leakages and financial wastages in government result to irregular spending, where a procurement officer or a KRA officer has got so much money that they've taken out of government, they don't know where to hide it. Number one, they will start dollarization of our economy. They want to buy more dollars, that we have got few dollars in the economy so that they can hide the money. Number two, they want to put it in some materials that do not participate in what my friend Governor Wamatangi is talking about, the bottom-up economy. Because if somebody takes so much money from government and then builds these empty malls that we are seeing mushrooming, or these big real estate projects that nobody occupies, and occupancy is registered with, again, other more money that has been taken from the public, it becomes an endemic problem. It is time that I wish as a young person to see the president addressing the issue of runaway corruption in government. Okay. That is the biggest solution that can be able to solve this. Otherwise, everything else will continue squeezing the last milk from the camel for the people who come from the north or from the cow. My brother Lekila will tell you that when you are milking, you know, when you're milking and the calf has certain, they have to milk some milk that you already have, you must leave for the calf some so that the calf can grow and then you can have milk the next day. Okay. The overtaxation in Kenya, in fact, I can say without a doubt that taxation is not the problem of the Kenyan economy. More taxation, we can even have tax cuts. Because Kibaki did this in 2003 and dealt with this runaway corruption in KRA collection side and procurement side of government and put our numbers positive in the country and made it possible to invest in the lower part of the economy.
Yes.
Just briefly, I think there are a couple of things that I wanted to put straight here. Because I always believe that facts are stubborn. And my senior, the former speaker, who I actually campaigned a lot in the Second Senate to become the speaker, stated that Tanzania is actually catching up on us. That is not true. Tanzanian economy is only about $64 billion. You know, the GDP is about $64 billion. If you look at the Kenyan economy, these are facts. You know, we are running an economy of $110 billion. There are two issues, and I think what we need to be talking about here, and I was hoping that I would hear from my good friend, Governor Matangi. It's very interesting to call you Governor Matangi, actually. I used to sit with him in Park. Yes. You know, is that how do we address these two monsters, corruption and weak governance? Yeah. Those are the two issues that are taking this economy down. And from now on, I think it behooves you and your colleagues, you know, when you're sitting down in your club, you know, the Council of Governors, for you to say, let's analyze our budgets. Let's look at our budgets. What are we spending money on? And then number two, you know, a lot of Kenyans, there are things that senators participate in, you know, in approving taxation. Members of the National Assembly, who are normally known as MPs, you know, I want to call upon you. Please, when it comes to the issue of the budget policy statement, when it comes to the issue of the budget-making process, please take some time and read and know what it is that you are giving the powers to for the executive. If you are allowing the executive to increase you know, the capital gain tax from 5% to 15%, think of something called unintended consequences. You know, one, no one will want to sell. So you're actually retarding the economic growth. So we need to be a little bit practical in terms of how we want this country to move forward. And then number two, I think all governors in Northeastern, right now the priority is for you to feed your people. Nothing stops you from sitting down with your MCAs and saying, we don't give a hoot in hell whether, you know, about these policies and all that stuff. Our priority is our people. Because unless we feed our people, or we find solution to feed our people, this year, we might end up losing 60% of the population of people in Northeastern. All right. So number one, feed your people. Number two, think of a solution. If you travel, look at what is happening in the UAE. And allow me to finish with this. In Qatar, instead of us going there and enjoying football, I was expecting the president to go and sit down with the Emiratis and ask them, gentlemen, how are you converting this sand into gold? You know, these guys, they have leased 50,000 acres in the desert in Sudan, where they are now growing fodder for their cows. I know about this because I have an interest in cows, you know, in the dairy sector. They have converted a desert, you know, over 50,000 acres every single day, containers with fodder, you know, lucerne, you know, bomber rods, you know, all these other foods that the cows eat. They ship it to the Middle East. Why can we not look at the next Dubai of Kenya, which is Northeastern, and say, how far is water? We keep on sensationalizing things and saying in Turkana, there is a lot of water which can be able to help the entire nation. Why are we just saying that? Can we now go in and tap into that resource? So, Governor Wamatangi, when you sit with your colleagues in your club, because I call it a club of, you know, 47. When you sit in that club, don't just sit there and start saying, oh, we need more money from the Senate, or the Senate should send us more money. Can you guys sit down and ask yourself, how are we spending this money? Okay. Are we taking into consideration what is happening to our people? Be practical. Right. And then when you sit with the president, you know, find out how do we align your goals and our goals.
All right.
You know, those are the key most important things.
Okay. Honorable Malim, I'll give you a chance, then give Governor Wamatangi a chance to respond as we close.
You know, let me tell you one thing. The GDP of Tanzania in 2015 was 47 billion. And in 2015, our GDP was over 80 billion.
That's true.
We have now stagnated at between 100 and 110.
No, we're at 110.4 billion.
Just a moment. Tanzania's GDP is projected at 120 billion by 2027, which is only 5 years down the line.
Projection.
Projection based on the current, based on the
Current trajectory.
on the growth.
Yeah.
2015, which is only 7 years ago, they were at 47. Today they are at 80.
And where were we? When they were at 40?
When they were at 40, we were about 80 something. Actually,
80.
closer to 90.
So now
and we're still within.
They are now 64. We are 110.
So
No, they are 7. They're 80, 70, almost 80, 77 something.
Right now?
Right now.
No, they're 64.
Just a moment. Check it. Check it. If you want, you can Google and find out right now, and I'll show you. Let me just show you right now. Let me just show you. You can Google and see how it is. Yeah. What is this?
64.4 billion.
76.58, 2022. That's Tanzania's GDP.
But where do you get that?
This is straight there. The facts are there. And I know it because I was in Tanzania just the other day.
Yes.
I was in Tanzania, my friend representing the
Honorable
speaker.
Malim, the point is...
The point I'm trying to tell you is that today, if you go to Namanga, there are more trucks coming and bringing goods to Kenya than are going out of Tanzania. Kenya going to Tanzania.
That's a fact.
That's a fact.
That's a fact.
That was not the case some 5 years back, by the way. It was reverse.
Okay.
Now we are less than 30. Our trade imbalance right now is we are over 70%. We are less than 30%.
Okay.
Progressively.
All right.
Progressively. When you go to Uganda right now, there are more coming from Uganda than leaving us and going to Uganda.
Okay.
There's more goods leaving this country and going to Uganda as opposed to the goods that are coming from Uganda and coming to this country.
All right.
You see, the economic development is about how much you sell.
Yeah.
And how much you earn in forms of foreign exchange. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
This is already gone. My friend, the way things are right now, and I was warning these things 5 years back when the Tanzanian economy was at less than 50 billion, and now it's 80 billion.
Okay.
Now, the point I'm trying to tell you is that, you know, when you bury your head in there, when I told them last time, I told our own technocrats, people in KRA, and particularly the customs, and I told them, don't destroy Mombasa Port. They say, oh, even if they go to Tanga and Tanzania, because our services are more superior, they'll come back to us. That is history, my friend.
Okay.
I was in Dar es Salaam port myself. These guys have built 6 additional ports without borrowing from outside.
All right.
They chased, you know, Magufuli came, canceled what they call the contract with the Chinese, who were asking for whatever the kind of contracts they have with us, and said we're going to use our own money. He used his own money for infrastructure, for the SGR, for what do you call the ports and the rest of it. So what I'm trying to tell you, we had only services, Ledama. We only supplied services to the region.
Okay.
And we had a pseudo-democracy that was not there in the rest of the country. Now everybody has a kind of a pseudo-democracy like us.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's not a perfect democracy.
All right.
But it's there. Other than that, we will, if we don't, let me just finish these things.
Yeah.
If we begin burying our hands, continue burying our hands and basking in that thing and saying that we're the best in the region, my friend, it's not going to take another 4 years or 3 years before we are going to be overtaken by other countries that are coming up very fast.
Okay.
You can imagine from 44 to now close to 80. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And progressive, 40 something, and that's something now.
That's all right. We're running out of time here. Governor Matangi, there was a message to the Club 47. Your response to the
Club 77.
Club 47.
I was laughing to myself. It's interesting how things change quickly. Because, I mean, this guy has been my colleague. We've been in the trenches together.
Now you're up there, buddy.
Just a few short years, once we've agreed that, not even years, there's a few short days, this. When we've agreed now, let's diversify so that the experience we gained together, we can transfer it to other sectors of this economy. And
He's still in the trenches.
all the good things, all the good things we did together. Now at least we can transfer them to the county.
But he's still in the trenches himself.
I mean, I'm sure he's also come out and he's done good work in Narok.
In the Senate, of course.
And also in Senate,
undoubtedly.
of course, and he's been strong on many issues. So I just want to assure my friend that once I've gone to the Council of Governors and also to the county, it's those good things that we learned and did together that we are going to transfer there. And by the way, as we've said, and I believe said Senator Ledama, you know, you will appreciate it, and I believe you do, that you know, this concept now that devolution has almost come through full cycle is going to transform, because in the Senate now you are sitting with 3 prominent leaders who have been governors in their respective counties, including the Speaker himself, you know, and the 2 governors, Uasin Gishu and Mandera. And we have senators now who have also gone to the National Assembly. The Speaker of the National Assembly is or has been a senator. We've got also senators and other governors who have gone now to national government. And this is a good thing, because now we can share those experiences and improve. And I believe moving forward now we are going to have a better approach. So I would say to my fellow leaders, Senator Ledama, 1, we are not in a club. Number 2, the work of a governor is, I believe, from now, my experience is one of the most demanding jobs, and you have to be ready to tackle it and serve the people, and that we are going to do. But allow me very quickly to say, because I've heard what my colleagues have said, that indeed, as a country, our pace slowed. I just believe that, 1, I could say 2 things. I believe that we still have the best economic infrastructure moving forward to still make this country shine. What we would not want to repeat at all is where we started losing it. We started losing it when we fought amongst ourselves and made a spectacle of this country in 2007, 2008. And people are afraid to do business with us now. We have gained momentum. And I believe in the next 5-10 years of the President William Ruto's regime and this government, we are going to start heading this country to the right direction. Of course, everybody else can pick it up.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you so much for making time. We've run out of time. This has been State of the Nation, and thank you for all your views and comments coming through. Coming up next is Cooking Tips with Willis Bazura Buru, right? See you in a bit.